Okay, so first let's try to implement a couple of these string input functions. So what right now it says unimplemented. Of course, if we want to implement it, we probably want to use something like result equals input. I call the input function and display the prompt to the user. Okay, so but the specification here requires that the function should force a mandatory input, which means that we need to check the result, whether it's 0 or not. So we say if the length is non-zero, then we can safely return the result. Otherwise, we can just simply display the message to the user right away, say that input cannot be left blank, just as required here in our specification, right? And so this the user may repeat again and again, so therefore this can be enclosed in endless loop, and so it should probably look like this. So I hope this works just fine, and we can test it right away, right? So we can clear our screen and try to run it and get string. If I just hit enter to enter blank, it just goes ahead and tells me that it cannot be left blank. Okay, so I enter something and it lets me pass. So it says that your input looks good, right? So I don't care what else here works or not working. It doesn't matter. So our next step is to implement getString with default. Okay, so if you read carefully what the spec says for this function here, is that we need to make the default prompt visible to the user. Based on the prompt, it will be a formatted string, and we need to display the default input to the user. Therefore, what we can do is, as opposed to the first version of getString, in this one we can say something like this, I suppose: result equals input, but the prompt should be also formatted for the default input, so that the user will see the default prompt. Okay, so then I would think that in this same case, if the length of result is non-zero, which means that the string entered by the user is not a blank string, we can simply return it back. And otherwise, I think else, just like this, we can return the default value. I think this is all for this getString with default. After all, not too many rules here. It's just that all these descriptions tell us how we should behave. So technically speaking, this getString with default will be able to accept empty string if the default input itself is specified as empty string, because if the user hits enter and it's going to be it's going to be an empty string, we can return the default value, which in itself, I think default input, right? It should say default input, or rather, right? So in this case, we'll just return the default input, which in itself can be blank. Okay, so let's see how this works. We're going to rerun this again. So again, the first string is just mandatory test, and this time we call getString with default, and default is an empty string. So I'm going to hit enter, and it returns back an empty string, and the script, the testing script, says this looks good. Now the default is hello, and if I hit enter, it basically tells me that hello did return from this function, and it also looks good. Okay, so this is as much testing as the script does with strings. So first time we entered some of the defaults. Like I told you, your task is to actually test it again. Actually, let's clear the screen and just run it again here. So this time I will not accept the defaults, right? So we can just type something in and do not accept default. So this time everything is entered and we're getting all non-default values. Okay, so this is pretty much the demonstration what we could do with our string inputs.